It's time for Where You Live with Gene and Tony, the show that's all about owning, buying, selling, renting, and association management. If it involves a home, we'll talk about it. Here's your chance to get your homeowner questions answered. From the Concierge Landscape Studios, here's Gene and Tony.
Needed the shelter of someone's arms, and there you were. Needed someone to understand my ups and downs, and there you
Welcome to Hour 2 of Where You Live with Gene and Tony. We are broadcasting live from the Concierge Landscape Studios, and we're also brought to you the second hour by Extreme Exteriors. If you're just joining us, we have the privilege of having on the phone with us this morning State Senator Chris Gerlach, who's talking to us about Senate File 926, which includes a number of specific proposed changes or amendments to legislation that pertains to homeowner associations. We'd like to hear from you this morning, too. Do you think that some of these ideas are correcting some wrongs that exist? Do you think that the way things might be worded, that they might create a few more? We'd like to hear from you.
Before the break, Chris, I was trying to express myself. I think homeowners associations are truly representative little governments, and I don't see the problem with letting individual homeowners associations make some of these decisions for themselves. What do you think about that?
Well, you're like everything, it's always about balance. And there are rarely absolutes. We always talk about the concept of local control at the state legislature and, of course, the federal government. The states complain that the federal government issues mandates, and the counties and the cities complain to the state that we issue mandates, and what you're saying in concept is absolutely true. Certainly, as a conservative, I believe the government that governs least governs best. It's best if it's closest to the people, all of those things. However, if, in fact, those levels of government are impeding on individual rights and freedoms or other things, then the balance has tipped too far in one direction, and some action can be justifiable to tip the scales back into balance.
Okay, so we do need to look at individual rights and finding that balance between individual rights and communities. Let's talk a little bit about this. I'm not that familiar with Minnesota Statute 500.215, and the proposed amendment is to allow...
The flagpole issue?
Not the flagpole issue so much as the non-commercial sign issue.
Oh, sure.
What's the definition here of a non-commercial sign?
I don't know specifically if we have a reference or if we define that specifically.
I think it says within the meaning of Section 211B, and I'm not familiar with that either.
211B would be, that would be a reference. That would be the political signs.
Okay, so we're not talking about things, as Eileen mentioned, like a sign that says, it's a boy, it's a girl, or I'm a member of the Nazi Party, or I hate my board of directors. We're not talking about those kinds of signs.
Or free the Indianapolis 500.
Or free the Indianapolis 500. That's my favorite one.
Yeah, if we're referencing Chapter 211B, that would be specific political signs.
Campaign signs?
Campaign signs,
I see. All right.
And that was something I do hear that quite often from individuals. I mean, being a person who campaigns and talks to people about putting signs up, and they say, well, I can't, I'm in an association.
Sure.
And that sort of thing. And so a lot of people would like to be able to express it. They feel it's an infringement on their First Amendment rights.
Yeah, but we have associations who've made that decision as a group through their board of directors, and they allow political signs as long as they're not impeding lawn care or snow removal or someone else's view, that kind of thing. And it's an issue that can be decided on that community level.
And that would be preferable, but apparently there's a dysfunctional association that can't seem to get a quorum and can't seem to address the situation.
But not every association is like that. So that's where I get concerned about these kinds of amendments, is because this is going to apply to every association, even those that are very active and take care of themselves.
Yeah. One of the other points, too, that I'd like to make is, and this was one of the first things that occurred to me, and that was, well, Eileen, you have a choice. You can buy a home in another area that doesn't have an association, and it comes up, and she had talked to me about that, and she said the truth of the matter is that fewer and fewer areas, if you want a newer home, they're all in associations. The builders are essentially all putting these associations in place, and it's really limiting your choice of where you can live. And if you don't want to be in association, she specifically wanted to be in a particular area in the south suburban area, but her options were limited for sure. And so that was what she had brought up. She says it's really not a free choice, and you end up getting into buying your home, and really that's what people are most focused on. And yes, they get the documents delivered to them, hopefully by state law, and they have 10 days to review those, and all of that. But then also they are it's quite an extensive document, and they are oftentimes downplayed by people who want to make the sale, and they do say, it's not a big deal, and don't worry about it. They don't really enforce these, and so then you get people that get into situations where they all of a sudden they get a rude awakening, and they find themselves being quite frustrated, and so if that's the trend, then maybe there is an interest in.
Do you, if I may, there's I've been not only in property management but also a member of the board of realtors for over 25 years too, and one of the things when I hear you mentioning that, Chris, that plays over in my mind again and again, is something that was drilled into my head from the very first day I became a realtor, and that is the things that need to be existent for a contract for a sale to take place. One is the person needs to be over 18. They need to be an adult. They need to be sane, and they need to be sober. And that's the law. So
what are you saying here, Gene?
Well, no, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that you take a look at when a person is purchasing property, they are purchasing it because they're of the right mind. They have the faculties to make the decision, and the idea of buyer beware does not seem to exist so much. It almost seems like in some ways we're getting to a point where we're getting to be a little bit overprotective of everybody,
or taking responsibility for other people
that another person has in purchasing.
Well, sure, Gene, but I think you missed one of the important items in contract law, and that's also the concept of the meeting of the minds, meaning that both parties have to have a firm understanding of what they're getting into. And yes, we do have those. We have the law that says you have to get the association documents ahead of time, and you can void the purchase agreement if you disagree with things in there. But like I say, that and I'm not set in stone on this. But
and we're just looking at this as our opportunity to let you know how we think.
Sure. But when you have a system that where is limiting choice because of the growth of associations, and you're having whether it's realtors or family members or anybody that influences and says, "Oh, don't worry about those association documents; they don't enforce them," and then you have associations where you have neighbor disputes, and then you can't get quorums to get your questions. I'll tell you one thing that struck my mind is that. In this particular bill, we had to bring up this flagpole issue, and there's something deeper here, and that is this. We have an existing law that allows you to display a flag.
Right.
That is the spirit of the law.
Right.
Now, did we specify flagpole in the yard? Well, no. But the spirit of the law was about the flag. So Eileen puts a flag on a flagpole, and then she receives a letter saying, well, you can't do it on a pole. Well, then what... why don't that issue wouldn't even be there if the spirit of the law was followed.
Except the law also says that the homeowners association can specify how flags can be displayed. The neighborhood, all the members of the community can make that decision through their board of directors on how it can be displayed. You know what I mean? So that's also on the books.
I get that. I understand that.
Yeah. And there's such a big difference between the single family home and an attached townhouse.
Yes, very much.
And generally what it says is if the homeowners association is going to be responsible for repairing and maintaining siding, then they should probably get to specify how things are attached to that siding. Or if the association is going to take care of the yard, they should be able to specify what can go in the yard. So I think practically speaking, there's big differences, and you mentioned it earlier, between the single-family detached homes and the attached homes.
If I may, Chris, one concern I have with this is I'm wondering if it may be creating an unbalance here with concentrating on an individual's rights versus the right of the group, and that is every homeowner association is its own privately held corporation, and by putting some of these laws in here, you are stating that a group of people acting as a corporation don't have the ability or authority to govern themselves.
Well, we have the existing law that governs associations already. These are amendments to that existing law. So, I mean, hasn't that question already been answered? The fact that we have existing laws?
Well, yes, we do. But generally, what I'm thinking here is that, when I think of the state, when the state will put together a piece of legislation or an ordinance, let's say I'm thinking of plumbing laws, generally they will be less restrictive because they allow each city to have the opportunity to be more restrictive in their approach. And to me, the MKIWA 515B does the same thing, and it says over and over again, repeatedly, that it says unless it refers back and says unless it is specifically stated in your declaration, and then it goes on to say if it's not there, then here's the law in that absence. But it recognizes that the declaration, the governing documents of the association may supersede, be more restrictive, and then that, of course, would be a choice that each homeowner has before they purchase the home.
Well, and I would say that there are a lot of examples here that say, yes, unless it's specified here, you leave it up to the local association.
But the flag and the sign issue actually says that local ordinance cannot prohibit a non-commercial sign.
Right. But we do that throughout law all the time, and the intent is if you want to protect certain rights of individuals. And I think, Gene, you hit the nail on the head, is there's a balance between rights of the individual and the rights of the group. And in this particular case, Eileen Tompkins is making the case. She's saying that the pendulum has swung too far in the direction of the rights of the group, and it's infringing on my personal or my private property rights, and therefore I want to push back the other way.
Yeah.
My argument is still she could be doing that through her homeowners association and not inflict her opinion on every association in the state.
That's certainly a valid point.
Well,
I don't disagree with that. But if, in fact, of the half a dozen or so items she's brought up, through the process, the legislative process, we'll look and we'll say, well, I think that, Tony, you make a good point on this one. Let's delete this section. And we might get down to a point where we're saying, you know what, here's one that does make sense for a change to the law. And that's often, where the process goes, but you don't know exactly which ones until we go through that process.
There you go.
And that's a great point. We're running out of time here, Chris. We certainly appreciate you being gracious and taking some time to be with us this morning.
Well, I appreciate the invitation to speak on this.
Yes, thanks. And folks, remember, this is just beginning legislation, as Senator Gerlach stated. If you have some very firm ideas of what should or shouldn't happen, of what you'd like to see changed, this is the democratic process in action. This is what we all need to be involved with. Give your state senator or House of Representative a call, letting them know how you feel about this, and we will see what See what happens. Well, we're going to take a break right now. And when we come back, we've got, I think Tony and I'd like to share some ideas here in closing out on this area of legislation, Senate File 926. And then we're going to deal with someone who is ready to sue their association. We'll have more on Where You Live with Gene and Tony after this.